Hello YouTube, it is your boy B3 Ooh, back with another kicking movie reaction review. Please forgive me for this review. I am sick. I'm quite sick. I've been sick for days, but that doesn't mean I can't watch movies. In fact, it means I have more time to watch movies. And today, we're reviewing the fourth and last film in my Bela Lugosi-Boris Karloff collaboration marathon, Black Friday from 1940. Pretty cool film. It's an American sci-fi, like, crime, drama, psychological thriller, kind of gangster horror-y thing. Well, not really horror. And it's starring the boys, Boris Karloff, and my favorite actor of all time, Bela Lugosi. Directed by Arthur Lyburn. Screenplay by Kurt Siodmak. His name is spelled in different ways, different places. Eric Taylor, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Stanley Ridges, Annie Nagal, and Anne Nagal and Anne Gwynn. Cinematography by Elwood Brendel. Edited by Philip Kahn. Production company and distributor, Universal Studios. Runtime, hour 10 minutes. It's in English. And screenwriter Kurt Siodmak would revisit the same theme of this movie in the films Donovan's Brain and Hauser's Memory from 1953 and 1970, respectively. And just some notes on production, you know. The original script was titled Friday the 13th, which is now a much more popular movie than this one. But it was changed to Black Friday. At the beginning of 1939, Universal announced that Willis Cooper was working on the script, and they were hoping that Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff would star. Then in August, Siodmak and Taylor were assigned to write the script. The cast... Okay, so they cast Lugosi as the doctor and Karloff as the professor. So there's like a Jekyll and Hyde professor guy, and then there's the doctor who's like kind of trying to manipulate him in this film. And Karloff insisted on playing the doctor. And then rather than a straight switch, like instead of Karloff becoming the doctor and Lugosi becoming the professor, what they did was Lugosi got a more minor role of another gangster, and then character actor Stanley Ridges was brought in to play the professor. And apparently Karloff felt he was not a good enough actor to play the dual role of the professor turned to the gangster, but it seems like it's more likely his appearance and voice couldn't be changed enough to make the switch convincing, which makes sense, because one, Boris Karloff was allegedly very, very humble. Also, Karloff has an extremely unique and recognizable face and voice. And then that kind of makes sense that they didn't put Lugosi in the professor role either, because he also has a very distinct face and an even more distinct voice. And I already know that Bela Lugosi wasn't really good at changing his voice, because his accent was so thick. And also his English was not good. I'm sorry, I'm very sick. He delivered a lot of his lines phonetically. I can't even speak, dude. Jeez. I'm like a presidential candidate. But that is kind of interesting, though, because Karloff did play a dual role in 1935 in The Black Room, 5 years before. But those characters were identical twins, so it's actually quite kind of different, because he didn't really have to... He just had to kind of act differently, but he didn't have to sound or look differently. But yeah, by December the title had changed to Black Friday, and Arthur Lyburn reportedly got the job of directing because of his work on The Big Guy, and then filming started at the end of the year. So pre-production took almost exactly a year, because it started at the very beginning of January and the very end of December. And, apparently during filming Manly Hall hypnotized Lugosi, which is just kind of a fun fact. But I am pretty glad that the casting ended up the way it did, because everyone was spectacular in their role. I think Lugosi's performances as gangsters, like in this film and Black Dragons, are very underrated. I think Bela Lugosi as a whole is underrated. He's finally remembered well enough in the modern day, but during his life he was not treated as well as he should have been. But yeah, Lugosi really shines as a gangster, and also I think Karloff was the best choice for the Doctor as well, and then we had our Professor. They were cast perfectly, okay? Like, the casting shuffle really worked out in the film's advantage, I do think. So the film is about this Professor and Doctor, and they're like families or best friends. The Doctor and his daughter are really best friends with the Professor and his wife. And the Professor goes to get his hat out of a shop when they're all riding together one day, and then some gangsters drive by and they're like shooting each other through the cars and stuff. One of the gangsters gets hurt and crashes into not only a store, but the Professor, and they're both rushed to the Doctor in the same ambulance. And the Doctor that works on them is, of course, Boris Karloff, his friend. So, Karloff, he decides to do an emergency surgery. An illegal surgery, and even if it wasn't illegal, it was unauthorized. So, the Professor is basically going brain dead, and he is dying. He has hours, if not minutes, to live. And the gangster is permanently crippled. He cannot feel anything below the waist. And he tells the Doctor, I'll pay you anything to save me. But the Doctor decides, hey, I'm not really actually going to save this guy. I'm going to save my friend. So he takes some of the brain matter and brain cells from the gangster and puts them in his friend's mind to save his friend. And it works. The gangster dies, and he tells the police that there were complications that they didn't foresee, like there might have been some internal damages or something, blah, blah, blah. And the cops don't really care because they're like, he would have just gone straight to the electric chair anyways, so they don't really look into it that much. And they believe the Doctor anyways, because why wouldn't they, you know? But then the Professor starts to recover. And then the Doctor reads the newspaper and finds out the gangster's name was Red Cannon. And he had been hiding $500,000 from his gang, which is why they were trying to kill him. So there's $500,000 hidden somewhere. And then Karloff's character kind of decides that he's going to try to see if his friend, the Professor, can actually experience some of Red Cannon's memories so he can get his hand on that money. So at first, he was still doing the wrong thing. He sacrificed another person's life to save his friend. He was still doing the wrong thing. But then he finds out he has the money, and then he kind of becomes a bad guy. Like, he's kind of seen as a good guy at first, because the audience is like, oh, we don't care that he killed a gangster to save this cute, innocent Professor. Like, why would the audience care about that, you know? Especially since Boris Karloff's character comes across as such a good guy. But then Boris is like, I'm going to start manipulating my friend to get $500,000 so I can get my own laboratory. And I don't have to answer to anyone else with my research. And I was like, okay. This was really a good character for Karloff. It really, really was. So he takes the Professor to New York, and they stay in the room that the gangster hid out in for a long time. And he's trying to bring the memories up, but instead of bringing the memories up, he completely brings up the personality. That's right. This is kind of a Jekyll and Hyde type thing. The Professor can completely transform into Red Cannon, which is wild. So he transforms into the Red Cannon, and the Doctor's like trying to help him, but the whole time the Doctor's trying to get the money. Red Cannon goes on a murdering spree, murdering all his old gang members. And Red Cannon does this thing where he goes to see his girlfriend, who was a singer at a club. Wow, that's not a stereotype for a mobster's girlfriend at all. But then again, this was the 40s, so it might not have been a stereotype yet. Who knows? But he goes and he meets with her, and she's like scared of him because he has another man's face. Like, his appearance does change, but he's still the professor, right? Instead of his hair being like kind of gray and curly, it gets slicked back and it turns black, and he kind of loses some wrinkles as well, and he loses his glasses because once the change happens he doesn't need his glasses anymore, and his posture completely changes. When he's a gangster he stands upright, when he's professor he kind of hunches a little bit, looks a lot meeker. Like, if you knew one of them well, you would easily be able to recognize both of them as the same body. But if you didn't know either of them at all, it's a pretty convincing change. So it's a pretty convincing change for the audience, I think. I thought it was a good change. Completely practical change. We don't actually see the transformation. Like, in most Jekyll and Hyde movies, you can visually see the transformation. In this film, there is no visual transformation, even though like, Jekyll and Hyde was doing on-screen full transformations that you could watch all the way through before films even had sound. And this movie didn't want to give us one. I think that's because the change was maybe just a lot more minor than Jekyll and Hyde transformations. I don't know. Don't ask me. Maybe the budget couldn't figure something out. I don't know. So, he goes on a killing spree, and then he goes to see his girlfriend, as I said. She doesn't think it's him. He, like, has all her mannerisms and stuff, and later she kind of betrays him to the other gangsters. And you can't blame her, because he just walked back into her life with a new face or body and didn't explain anything to her. He didn't even have to give her the real explanation. He could have just said, I faked my death and got plastic surgery. That's why I look like this. But he doesn't bother explaining anything to her. So she thinks it's a completely different person, which is why she betrayed him. If he would have bothered explaining it to her, she probably would not have betrayed him. And they could have run away together like he wanted with $500,000. But she did betray him to Bela Lugosi. He does end up killing Lugosi and all his gang members. Apparently, there were only like 4 or 5 people in his whole gang, so it was pretty easy, actually. So, Boris Karloff tells him you gotta chill out or we'll lose the money, and then he's like, wait, how do you know about the money? You're just using me to get money. And I thought that was a really weird scene, because earlier in the film, Red Cannon tells Boris Karloff that he will pay him anything he wants if he can save him. And he did save him, right? But eventually, Karloff gets the money, and they go back to the little town they were in, the little university, and Karloff thinks that now that they're out of New York, that gangster personality will be dormant. And he is wrong, because whenever the professor hears sirens, he thinks it's the police. That kind of sets him off. That sets the gangster in him off, and he turns into the gangster. Then he shows up to Boris Karloff's house to kill him and get the money. And he tries to kill Boris Karloff's daughter. And Karloff shoots him and kills him. But before he dies, he transforms back into the professor, and the professor's like, why? Why? Which was pretty impactful, I gotta say. It was good. And Boris Karloff straight up gets the chair at the end. He gets the chair. Which is crazy. I don't know that he deserved the chair. Prison? Definitely he deserved prison. Unethical experimentation. He broke the line many, many ways. All kinds of stuff. But did he deserve the chair? I honestly don't think executing people is ethical, personally. But if I did, I still wouldn't think he deserved the chair. Honestly. So, that's basically it for this film. One thing I want to say is it starts with Boris Karloff being walked to the chair, and then he gives all his notes and records to a reporter from a newspaper, and he says, "You're the only newspaper that treated me fairly and took me seriously. The others condemned me before they even had any evidence. So I want you to have all my notes and get an exclusive on the story." So then the whole story is actually the reporter reading through the notes, so we see what happened, and then it ends with Karloff finally getting executed. And normally, I do not like when movies start at the very end of the film and then flash back to the beginning. Usually films do that because they have incredibly boring first acts, and they want you to know that it will get exciting. Please don't leave during the movie. Like, I recently, very recently, just a few days ago I believe, reviewed a film called Alien Incursion. Alien Incursion starts with the only two survivors of the film on an ATV riding away from the fully grown alien. So in the first few seconds of the film, the movie shows you who survives and the full final form of the alien. Terrible fucking writing. But this film did it right. Because you see Boris Karloff getting executed, and your thought is, wow, what led to this? And this movie is very unique compared to some of the last ones I reviewed. Like, the last one I reviewed, The Invisible Ray, kind of had a happy ending for the couple, right? But not for Karloff's character himself, who's the main character. The other two films that we did before had happy endings, and they ended on comedic notes, which completely destroyed any impact that the climax had. Especially since they were horror films, right? This film has a couple comedic relief characters, but they're not overdone. You know, the ending isn't comedic at all. The ending is sad and dark. A lot of films weren't like this in this time. Like, they kind of... Most films around this time, and lots of films today, have to have a happy ending, and they have to have a romantic interest. Right? Most films, even in the modern day, will not get greenlit if they don't have a romantic interest and don't have some kind of romantic plot in there. That's why H.P. Lovecraft movies don't get made. Guillermo del Toro has tried to get several Lovecraft projects off the ground, and studios won't back them because they don't have love interests or happy endings. This film does not have a love interest or happy ending. It's thriller straight through, really depressing ending, and it's quite good. And we have a couple comedic characters like the bellhop and the taxi driver. The bellhop, I think, was pretty effective as a comedic character. The taxi driver scared the shit out of me. Like, scared the shit out of me. Because Red Cannon in the professor's body gets in the taxi, right? And it's supposed to be comedic, like the taxi driver is blabbering about his problems to Red Cannon, and Red Cannon has to shut him the fuck up. So, we get into the taxi, and the taxi driver's like, being a night shift taxi driver sucks. My wife's always on my ass. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he was talking about, like, my kids annoy me too, you know? My kid got in my lap this morning, and he was like, tell me a story, Papa. Tell me a funny story. So I shoved the kid into the ground, and I was like, okay, that's child abuse. And then he was talking about his wife was yelling at him, and she wished she'd just shut up. And then the taxi driver says, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill all of them. And I was like, this is comedic relief? This is dark. I would get his tags and call the fucking police. This is horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. And I was like, this is supposed to be a comedic relief scene. Holy shit. It was pretty insane. But overall, this film is quite good. I think it's underrated. Like, I don't really think that The Invisible Ray was underrated, but I do think this film is underrated. But I also kind of understand why it doesn't have the classic film status that The Black Cat and The Raven do. But it is a very good film. If you're kind of like a crime drama sci-fi thriller fan, I think you'll really enjoy this film. If you really like old kind of classic-y movies, or even just Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, two of the greatest actors of all time, in my opinion. Great film. This is a great film. So thank you all very much for your support. I'm going to eat something because I'm starving. I haven't been eating much because every time I eat, it tears up my stomach because I'm sick as hell. But thank you all once again for your support. If you want to support us, check out our Patreon, and we just have a one-time donation link down there also if you don't want to like subscribe or anything. But Patreon has a bunch of content that you can check out, and I'm actually about to add a ton of content to Patreon, so definitely check it out. That's it. Thank you all once again for your support, and I will see you all next time.